Hi folks. The other night, for some reason unbeknownst to me, I woke up in the middle of the night, not able to return to a sound sleep. So what did I do, says I? I turned on la television. Yeah, that's what I did, kids. And on the Public Education Network, channel 13 here in the Dallas area, there was a documentary or a story about a gentleman in the early 1900s or thereabouts who migrated from Japan. He was Japanese citizen. He migrated from Japan to the United States. He gets a job on the railroad, and at one point while he's working, he's riding on the railroad through the state of Nebraska. Well, he looked around and he said, "Golly gee willikers, I like this joint." So he decided he was going to move his wife to Nebraska and establish a farm, and that's what he did. He moved to Nebraska, bought a farm, started farming, and had children. I think 6 children he had. Well, now, December 7th, 1941, the Pearl Harbor was bombed by the Japanese. And his children are young adults now, his 2 oldest children. And he realized that these children of his were not Japanese. They were Japanese ancestry, but they were American. They were born American, raised in America, taught in American schools, where at that time diversity was not taught. The attempt to balkanize this nation was not there, but to unify the nation. We were taught the American melting pot, that we took all these people from all over the world, migrated to the United States, brought their cultures here to form the great American melting pot. We were one, not many, but we were one. As our motto is, E pluribus unum. Okay. So now he tells his 2 older boys, look, if you want to go fight for your country, go right ahead. And here he is Japanese, but his 2 children were American. They wanted to join the American military to fight for America, their country. So they go to a recruiting post in town, and they would not accept them. Why? Because they were Japanese ancestry. Remember, 1941, America was a very racist nation, as many nations were at the time, at that era, which does not excuse such behavior. So they go to a local town, another town rather, and they get accepted, and they wanted to be in the Air Corps, where Ben did, Ben Kuroki, the oldest son. That's what this story was about. He wanted to be in the Air Corps. Well, they sent him to the Air Corps, but he's doing menial tasks, nothing to do with flying or on the bombers or on the fighters. So he kept trying to get assigned to an airplane, a bomber. Kept being turned down because he was Japanese. They kept making racial slurs at him, kept poking him for being of Japanese ancestry. Finally, this one captain of a B-24 says, "Sure, you can be a gunner." So Mr. Kuroki becomes a gunner in the Army Air Corps on a B-24. They are now in North Africa, they're now in North Africa, our first confrontation with the Nazis. They're playing, for some reason, the bomber, for some reason, flying over North Africa, and it loses power, either gas or one of the engines break down, and they land in the desert. And over the sand dunes, what did they see? Guess what they saw, kids? Horsemen coming at them, men on horses waving rifles, and with a fierce look in their face. They were Arabs, and they said to themselves, uh-oh, we're in for it now. You see, many of the Arabs at the time in that part of northern Africa were aligned with the Nazis. But it just so happened coming over the other hill was the cavalry. Yeah! No, not John Wayne cavalry. The Spanish cavalry. They landed in Spanish, I guess in Spanish Morocco, that part belonging to Spain. Well, the Spanish cavalry comes and runs off the Arabs. Well, they take the Americans and hold them captive, because their rule at the time was, the Spanish, since they were a neutral country, anyone we catch military from either nation, any nation, be it the fascists or the Allies, they were going to hold them captive for the duration of the war. So they put them in a prison camp in North Africa. A few days later, Ben Kuroki escapes. Well, a few days later, they catch him again. So So finally the Spanish authorities tell him and his fellow airmen, look, if you promise not to escape, we'll send you to spend the rest of the war at a hotel in Spain. They said, all right, we won't escape. So they ship him to Spain, to this palatial hotel, give them civilian clothes, and they're living the good life. Well, the American ambassador in Spain discovers this, and he says, wait a minute, we need those guys, we need those airmen to fly in Europe. The Spanish authority says, okay, you want them? No problem. But you have to give it, we'll trade you. For every airman, you give us a new Buick. So that's what the Americans did. They traded the flies for Buicks. So now Ben and his crew are flying their missions in Europe. At the time, if you flew 25 missions, you no longer had to fly anymore for the duration of the war. Well, Ben flew his 25th mission. But that wasn't it for him. He wanted to fly more, so he volunteered for more missions to stay engaged actively in the war. He also became aware at the time of the 442nd, which was a regiment of Americans of Japanese ancestry who happened to be the most decorated regiment in the European theater in the American military. So at this point now, they ship him to the South Pacific to fly in the South Pacific as a gunner. He was the first and I think only one of Japanese ancestry to be in the theater of the war in the Air Corps. He flies a total of 58 missions in defense of his country, the United States of America. You see, folks, this story is so illustrative of the fact that we are a melting pot. We come from many backgrounds, but our loyalties and our allegiance is not with that background. It's with this, the United States of America. You see, Americans with Japanese ancestry, about 125,000, were sent into internment camps during that war. Yet they still fought for the United States. Blacks, whose grandfathers were slaves, volunteered and fought for the United States, as well as they were denied voting rights in many states. People of Mexican heritage in the United States were treated horribly, yet they fought for the United States and volunteered. Native Americans, the American Indians whose lands were stolen from them, volunteered and fought for the United States of America. We are many, e pluribus unum, but when it comes to our security and the protection of this country, we are one. Alright, folks, we'll see you. God bless you. God bless America. And God bless the nation you happen to be in. See ya.
We are springing to the far for 300,000.